Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. Join us each week or when you can. We enjoy exploring wellness concepts and reminding you to make time for wellness.
This is episode 117.
It's another week of Let's Be Well Together podcast. It's John Webster. I am here with Elise Seifert. Hi, Elise.
Hey, John.
Let's talk about a social media post. I like this one we found at Sunny Bloom Inspiration. It's 5 minutes mental health check. So why don't you read the first 3 questions it asks, and I'll read the next 3.
The first question is, have my muscles been stretched? Have I eaten regularly and healthy? And have I been nice to myself and others?
The other 3 they mention, have I had a good enough sleep? Am I hydrated enough? How am I feeling? Do you want to talk about one of those, Elise?
I'd love to. Just as a whole, though, it reminds me of an Instagram reel that kept coming up for me a lot, where there are 2 people in a conversation, and the first person says, I'm feeling really down. I'm not feeling myself. And the other person says, well, have you had any water? And they're like, no. Have you gone outside? No. Have you exercised? No. So it's just so many simple things that really create positive mental health. And I think this Instagram post really highlights that.
Yeah. I mean, just before you jump into any one of them, have I stretched my muscles? That's a physical health thing. Have I been nice to myself and others? That could probably fit into, mental wellness and also social wellness. Have I eaten regularly and healthy? Obviously, another physical. How am I feeling? I think that's kind of getting at emotions. And so that's part of the mental health realm. Am I hydrated enough? Another physical one. And have I had good enough sleep? Again, physical. So there's so much going on to get to a mental health state that feels good.
And I think one that stands out for me personally is, have I been nice to myself and others? I know back in episode 61, you and I talked about one of the limbs of yoga, which is nonviolence. So this one really reminded me of that. And I really thought it's so important to speak to yourself nicely. We often really focus on how we treat others because it helps to create positive relationships. So of course you want to prioritize that. But this question really makes me think about how important it is to prioritize the positive relationship with yourself, because it really does shape your mental health.
I'm glad you said that, because actually what I expected when you said that's the one you gravitated towards, you were going to talk about being nice to other people. And I was going to sit in the wings and be like, wait a minute, Elise, what about yourself? Because when I talk to people on the show, I do hear a theme from a lot of them. And a lot of them are saying, I don't have time to take care of myself because obviously my children are a priority. My family's a priority, my spouse, my parents, whoever it is. And so few of us can remember that it's really important to be good to ourselves. How many hundreds of times are we going to keep referring to the oxygen mask example in the airplane? But it's because it's so easy to, all you have to say is the airplane oxygen mask example and people get it. If you're not healthy, if you're not feeling good, if you don't have enough oxygen, you're going to have a lot harder time taking care of others. So you got to take care of yourself.
What about you? Which one of these mental health checks stand out for you?
The one that surprises me is, have my muscles been stretched? And this is kind of like my Achilles heel. So I haven't had kind of the whole body experience. I talk about in my book and on the show about this, that it's really worth it to become physically fit. And to do that, you need to eat right, eat nutritious food in moderation, be at the right weight, do aerobic training, strength training, core training, and stretching. At different times over the last 8 years, because I've kind of been doing this since 2016, I've gotten all the other pieces at times, but not stretching. Every time I try and get stretching in, so here's what I do. I say, okay, I'm going to stretch 4 or 5 times a week. Maybe I can do it when I'm watching TV at night. And I do it 3 times and I don't do it anymore. And now I'm at the point, it's kind of embarrassing. Like I can't even bend over and touch my toes. And I wonder if I can get that going with the rest of them. I think it would make a really big difference, because at the very least, I feel kind of ashamed that I can't stretch and that I'm letting this go and that I'm letting myself down. So at the very least, have I stretched my muscles, or have my muscles been stretched? Maybe it will make me feel better.
maybe it will. And I do like that this mental health check says, have my muscles been stretched? Not really, have I exercised? Because I think sometimes people can think of exercise as daunting. I have to exercise for like an hour and a half in a day. Whereas stretching my muscles, you're like, oh, I could do that while I'm watching a TV show, like you said. So it seems a little bit more approachable. And I do think it is important to stretch your body and to have that mobility, but it's easy to put off.
I guess I'm lucky in a way because I'm married to Sheila, and she was a ballet dancer and a dancer since a kid, and she's constantly stretching. And she tells me that if she's tight, for whatever reason, she hasn't been able to do stretching or she got tight, she's not happy. Like, she just doesn't feel right. And so even last night we were watching TV and she said, I have to stretch. And she was stretching as we watched TV. So, I have this great example right in front of me. And one of these days I got to start doing it. Is there another one on there that you were thinking of?
I like the question, how am I feeling? I think it's really good to assess how you're feeling throughout the day, maybe multiple times a day, and maybe reflecting on why you might be feeling that way and how, if it's a feeling that's hurting you, not helping you, how can you let it go? So I might add more to that question is, how am I feeling? How can I let it go if it's hurting me?
And earlier you talked about something, and it's funny what connects with people, right? So I'm not going to remember the example. You're going to have to help me. But at one point you talked about a program that the kids had, like the kindergarten kids. And the idea was to observe your emotions, to observe your feelings as if they're fish, right? And then you watch the fish go by. I never really, before we started on this kind of journey, I never would have understood that question, how am I feeling, in the context of, hey, something's happening, but I can observe it. I don't have to be it. I can figure out what it is and see if I can observe the different things that I'm feeling right now. So remind me of that little analogy.
Of course. So that is from Cosmic Kids Zen Den. They're found on YouTube. It's an amazing program of videos that they have. And this strategy is called Be the Pond. So when you're feeling a way that's maybe affecting your decisions or affecting your mood, you want to back away. And instead of being that feeling, which is the fish, you want to be the pond and just observe all of the feelings swimming around the pond. And there have been so many times where I've actually put that video on for the kids where I am grumpy with the kids for their maybe lack of listening or just being silly or something that's going on in the class. And I'll put that video on and I take myself away from that feeling because I'm like, oh, okay, I need to practice what we're teaching here. And it works. It's very effective.
Well, then let's come back to what you said. You said, how am I feeling and how can I let it go? When you said that, I thought of that example that you had talked about, because I almost feel like if I'm imagining observing what I'm feeling, almost like a fish, I can let the fish swim away, right? And I can say, okay, that was there. I'm not going to be that anymore. Just off you go, fish.
Yeah, go be somewhere else.
Okay, well, we're nearing the end. And I guess the main reason I wanted to talk about this post was because what I really like about it is it's similar to the approach we like to talk about, which is there's many categories of wellness, and mental health is one. So we call it mental wellness. Inside of that is a whole bunch of different components. But a lot of the stuff that's being talked about in this post is from another category, whether it's social, physical. And what you hear mostly are people talking about things like mindfulness exercises, right? Coming back to the moment when you have mental health issues, anxiety and stress, all great things, but there's more to it. So I love the idea of this post where you're like, hang on a second, how have I eaten? How many times have I had not enough sleep? And that's the reason I'm having a bad mental health day, or I haven't had enough water. So I just love this idea of broadening our minds. And if we're not feeling great, or even if we are, just take 5 minutes to do a mental health check. And you might realize that you aren't feeling as great as you thought. And there's something easy you can do, like get some sleep, get some water, do something, and maybe start to turn things around. Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds. Today's interview is in the categories of both physical and mental wellness. Eric Davis will talk to us about his experience with different types of martial arts and what he gets out of it. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you very much for having me, John.
Eric was on our show recently. He's a partner at Smith Valeriat Law Firm, LLP. He practices municipal and planning law. He's a Law Society of Ontario certified specialist in municipal law, local government, land use, planning and development. And throughout his over 17-year career, he's acted for both private and public sector clients on all manner of issues related to municipalities. He's a director on the board for Kids Ability, a trustee of the Waterloo Region Law Association, and a member of the Ontario Bar Association's Municipal Law Section Executive. In 2019, Eric was awarded the Waterloo Award, the City of Waterloo's highest civic honor, for his involvement in the community. Now, Eric, I could approach a discussion on martial arts from different perspectives. I could chat with sifus or senseis or other teachers. But today I'm hoping to hear from someone who studied martial arts while going to school and working at a profession. I'm going to start by asking, what got you into it in the first place?
Well, it's a good question. To give you a bit of my background, like I've sort of always struggled with weight.
Me too.
And so even from when I was a kid. And so really what I was hoping to do was after university, I went to Laurier locally. And I was not, shall we say, in the last 2 years of university, living in the most healthy of ways.
Okay.
And so after I graduated from...
just by that, you mean eating the wrong foods, not exercising?
Eating the wrong foods, not exercising.
Okay.
You know, when you consider breathing exercise, you have problems. So I sort of was like, okay, you know, I was living on my own. I'd moved out of the house, even though my parents are from Waterloo. And I was not eating healthy.
Okay.
I was not doing healthy things. And so really what happened is that after I graduated from Laurier, I had about a year between my undergrad and law school. And what I sort of decided to do is I said, look, I am tired of being overweight. I've had enough. I need to take control of my health. What can I do? And I knew a lot of people can go to the gym and work out and pump iron and do all those sorts of things. I just knew that I would not have the patience.
That's not
for
your
that.
thing?
No, I like to engage the mind as well as the body. Like I wanted to ideally learn a new skill, learn something new, do something, try to expand my horizons. And so I thought to myself, well, I'd like to do martial arts.
I like that because a lot of people, you know, I got to work out and they're just like, okay, I'm supposed to do X. But, you know, we often say to people, try a bunch of stuff, like find out what you like, because if you love it, that's what's going to keep you coming back.
Yeah, and that's what I found. Like I started off at a local dojo, which no longer exists anymore, but it was Robitaille's Academy of Martial Arts in downtown Kitchener. And I started off doing their jiu-jitsu and karate simultaneously. So I did that. And I quickly found that, you know, after doing that basically 5 days a week, the weight just dropped off me.
Really?
Oh yeah. Like I usually sit around, like I think at the end of law school, I was probably around 280, 290, around there. And I dropped down, like I think I managed to get down to like around 235, 230. But let's just say my weight muscle ratio was far better.
And for people who don't see Eric, he's a tall guy.
Well, I'm about 6'1", and I'm on the larger side. But so I managed to drop down to a much healthier weight relatively within a few months, and also managing diets and those sorts of things. But I felt that it was amazing. And then the challenge for me was, after I had achieved this success, then all of a sudden I went away to law school in Ottawa.
Right, where you don't have time for anything.
Well, what I did was I sort of thought to myself, well, even though law school was quite demanding, I thought to myself, I need to stay involved in martial arts.
Right.
And they didn't have a jiu-jitsu dojo or karate dojo near the university, which is where I lived. But they did do taekwondo lessons.
Okay.
Now, taekwondo is usually for people a bit more spry than I am.
Yeah, because
a lot of kicking.
You got to be flexible, kick high.
Yeah, let's just say my flexibility needed some work. And so I did that for like 3 years in law school. So I did taekwondo for 3 years, which I consider a bit respectfully to taekwondo practitioners, a bit more of a sport rather than necessarily a sort of self-defense martial art. But it was a great experience there. And then after I finished law school, I came back to Waterloo Region and then picked up my jiu-jitsu career where it sort of left off. Not so much karate when I came back, but I just did jiu-jitsu for then several years thereafter. And it was a wonderful learning experience because it just really teaches you a lot of new skills. It's good in self-defense, it's good in discipline, and it's also good in mindfulness.
I actually took Kung Fu for a long time in downtown Kitchener. at the Golden Tiger. That was before I went away, just before I got married. And then I unfortunately never got back into it. But one thing I found was it wasn't what I was expecting, right? Like, so you expect to learn how to fight and take care of yourself and defend yourself. But it didn't take too long before you realize that that was like a really small part of it. And so much of it was getting more flexible and doing things like getting into the moment and being disciplined and respect for all kinds of things around you. And it was a really interesting process. So what are some of the things that you got out of your experience?
Well, one thing that I remember learning is that my sensei at the time used to always say, some days you might not feel like going in and doing martial arts. He's like, it's those days where you desperately need to come in and do martial arts. That basically you need to have the discipline to come in, but also oftentimes in martial arts, if you're trying to focus on self-defense or those sorts of things, you need to sort of be ready for the weak moments and still be able to work through certain things. That there are some times where I was like, quite frankly, feeling lazy. And I didn't want to go out and I was tired and I've had a long day. And it's those days where I just sort of say to yourself, nope, these are the days I most need to go in and show the discipline and go on there and prioritize health and wellness and be like, you know what, even though I really don't feel like doing this, I need to go out there and go out and do that. And oftentimes I found that at the end of that session or training session, you feel mild better. And it really puts you in a different frame of mind. And I can't remember ever having a regret that I actually dragged myself out of the house and went out to go to the dojo.
That's very interesting. And I never really thought about that. But the other aspect to it is, and that's an amazing life lesson, that just keep showing up, because so many times in life, just keep showing up gets you ahead of so far ahead of the curve. But the other part of it for me too, when I took it, I was in a class. So like I joined around the same time as a bunch of other people, and we steadily kind of grew up together. And some people would kind of fall back and other people would move up, but there was kind of this nucleus of people. And not only was it because I have to get out because I should, it was I want to because my friends are there and the people I know are there. And if I don't, I'll fall behind. And it's kind of this like way of all kind of patting each other in the back and keeping each other encouraged.
Yeah, and I mean, there was a core group of folks who stuck around and did lessons with me. I mean, I found there was still a lot of people who came in, did it for a little bit and then dropped off. But there was also a core group. But also, I think what made it good for me is that if there was ever a period of time where I just couldn't come out or something like that, when I came back, it wasn't sort of like judgmental. It was like, we welcome you. Thank you very much for coming back out. We're welcoming you back. Like, we're not trying to make you feel bad about it. We're really trying to be like, hey, we missed you. We're happy you came back out. And I think sometimes that mentality really can make a difference for people, where it's just like, look, we're not judging you because life happens and that's great, but we're just really want you to come out and continue doing this. And I think that sort of positive mentality in a lot of aspects can really help encourage people to continue and to maintain to do something.
When I took yoga, I had that too. I found that, you could be away for a while and come back and no one judges. Even in any given class, they don't judge. They just are glad you're there and do as much as you can. Now, when we were setting this up, there was something you said that I found really interesting and I never really connected with, which is, you're in this hectic, busy day. Your mind's always racing. And then when you're in the dojo or wherever you are, you can't do that. You have to focus on the moment because, like you said, someone might be strangling you or pulling your arm. So tell me a little bit about how taking martial arts brings you to the moment.
I find that in a career like law, it's not something that's easily put aside. At least from my perspective, you're constantly thinking about things. You're constantly thinking about files, arguments, different things going on, different priorities, different timelines, all of this. And so it can be difficult to shut down those voices in your mind for a little bit. But I found that martial arts really helped me with that, because you oftentimes work out in martial arts and those sorts of things. But when you're sparring with someone or practicing with someone or grappling with someone or those sorts of things, you have to be in the moment, because not only to focus on what it is you're doing, but also on focusing, quite frankly, on not harming the other person.
That's true. It's really important not to hurt yourself or the other person.
Exactly. Like, I find that, you need to be present and focused so that, you're using appropriate strength, or you're thinking about, okay, how am I going to interact this? Because nobody goes to martial arts to be injured or anything like that. But sometimes, injuries happen, but you need to be focused in the moment. And even if somebody's like throwing you or something like that, you need to focus on how to fall properly. If somebody's trying to, if someone's trying to choke you out, needless to say, you're thinking about how do I start breathing again, rather than what's going on in this file back at work. And so I find that if you're really focused on, it really helps you through the activities that you're doing. It forces you to focus on the moment, so that at least when you've exited the dojo after a while, you don't really realize it at the time, but you've basically had an hour or more of just focusing on other things, being present at the moment, focusing on what you or the person you're working with is doing, focusing on the activity, and then you exit there, oftentimes, having worked really hard and that sort of thing, and being like, wow, it really can change one's mindset that one might have had going into it, where you're concerned or worried or stressed out, and it can just change it all the way around, where you go out there and say, wow, that was a great session. I learned a lot. We did a lot of fun things. This is great. And just that ability to change the mindset can sometimes be very useful.
Part of the reason why I wanted to talk just at high level, we're not getting into the nuances of karate or kung fu or taekwondo, and why I wanted to talk to someone like you, a regular person like me, is because in my experience, my thought beforehand was people go to kung fu because they want to learn how to fight, or they want to defend themselves. Or I would say the majority of people who I ran into in martial arts weren't that interested in those things. They were just regular, everyday people, and they're getting the benefits that you and I are talking about, from discipline to mindfulness and the rest of it. Is that similar to your experience?
Yeah, I got involved in martial arts mostly to just, learn new skills, learn new things, just out of pure interest. I also did some weapons training with nunchucks and other things of that nature. And so it was more sort of just being engaged in the material. I don't believe I've ever been in a physical altercation, and so nor do I plan on being in a physical altercation.
You know what's funny too is, I don't know, because I'm not that kind of person either, but I can't help but wonder if there might have been opportunities to be in a physical altercation. And I just said to myself, no, just because it was kind of pointless. Like, how to defend yourself, and there's something else you can do, and there's just no need for it. Well, and I wonder if it's because I took kung fu as opposed to not.
Well, one of the things that martial arts stresses is to only act in self-defense. You are not to go out there and start trying to bully people, push people around, do those sorts of things. Use your knowledge for bad, almost.
Right.
Like, you're there, if somebody is attacking you and you cannot get away, like, that's the first option.
Right.
Just try to leave. Try to extricate yourself from the situation. If you cannot, and you are forced to defend yourself, if your health or physical well-being is being threatened, it's at that point that you use the skills you've learned in martial arts. And so, you're probably right that there might be opportunities where one might have been able to engage in a physical altercation, but martial arts really trains you to be like, no, avoid those situations. It doesn't matter. And also, in some ways, if you have a great deal of background and experience in martial arts, you oftentimes know how dangerous you can be.
That's true.
And you also do not want to unduly hurt another individual, because somebody else thinks, oh, I can take this person, like in my case, I have at least a decade of martial arts training. I'm very fearful of defending myself, because oftentimes, we've been trained to know how to do different things to ensure, your physical well-being. And oftentimes that's at the cost of someone else's. And so I just think what martial arts tries to teach is just avoid those types of situations, walk away, get out of it. It's only used as a last resort.
In Kung Fu, the teacher's called Sifu, and my Sifu made that point over and over and over again. It was really well explained, and it wasn't just so much like a rule book. It was like you got the real sense as to why you should not use it in an aggressive way. I guess what I was trying to say too, though, in part was, I'm sure there have been times where somebody was trying to cause a bit of a ruckus, and because I had studied Kung Fu, like, now I only know enough to get myself in trouble. I'll try and kick someone and probably pull a muscle. But there's a calmness, right? So something's escalating and you just exude a kind of a calmness. You're not afraid. And so that kind of keeps them from getting too aggressive. And then you can say, hey, come on, let's just settle down here.
Exactly. Like, you oftentimes, after studying martial arts, have a quiet confidence.
Right.
Where it's like, look, I'm not reacting in an emotional way back to you. I'm not trying to escalate the situation. I just have a quiet calmness and being like, look, I don't think we need to escalate this any further. Let's try to resolve this matter in a reasonable way. And I think that's the most you can ask for. But I think that type of discipline, that type of approach, that type of understanding, that's what you can gain from martial arts.
Yeah, I really like that expression, the quiet calmness, as opposed to like the aggressive one. So, I mean, some people try and get uber aggressive to try and get the other guy back. But if you're just got this quiet calmness, I think that's what makes people think, huh. Okay, so here we are at the end of another interview, and I've asked you this question before. We ask every guest the same question in a context where we all have areas of wellness that are important to us, but not enough time to focus on all of them at any given time. We do our mini wellness check-in. So, Eric, today, are you currently neglecting an area of wellness in your life? And if so, can you think of even one thing you can do to foster wellness in that area?
Well, I think, I really believe in social wellness and going out there and trying to participate in the community and giving back and those sorts of things. And so one of the things that I always look for is different opportunities to be involved, to be more involved, and to really try to focus on the social impacts that one can make to one's wellness. So my goal is to really try to find different ways to get involved and to take up those opportunities to really promote social wellness, just for myself and for others.
One of the things I say often on the show is that our best chance of wellness is together. It's no coincidence our show is called Let's Be Well Together. So I hope you get to go out and do a lot of those things and work with other people and enhance everyone's wellness.
That's great. Thank you very much, John.
I'm Cameron, and welcome to another installment of The Adventures of the Starving Artist. Do you remember the first concert you ever went to? I do. I was about 14 years old, and my mom had treated me, my brother, and my best friend to tickets to see City and Colour live at the Centre in the Square in Kitchener. And not only were we there, but we were really close to the stage, like 3 or 4 rows back. I could see him, 15 feet away from me. It was insane. And it was my very first concert ever, aside from like a choral concert that I would have been participating in, of course. And I wasn't really sure what to think going in, but on the way out, I remember feeling inspired and motivated, and it was honestly that concert that made me want to pick up a guitar. And I did. And my best friend who was at the show with me, Trevor, he helped me buy a guitar. And he helped me learn my very first song on the guitar, which happened to be a City and Colour song. It's called Comin' Home. And for those of you who know it, you'll know the main riff, but if you don't, that's okay too. It's got this slide in it. And for a beginner guitarist, everything hurts on your fingers, everything does. But slides are especially brutal because you haven't yet developed the calluses to handle that aggressive, demanding motion of your fingers. And I remember practicing this thing, and I actually ripped my finger open and, bled. Not because I was shredding so hard, but just because I was new. But I was determined, and eventually I got it. So fast forward to this year. Just last week, my mom treated my brother and me again to tickets to see City and Colour. And it was, what an experience it was. He has obviously aged the same rate I have. About 15 years ago, right? So to see him in my mind's eye from that very first show, which is ingrained in my memory, and then to see him the other night, live again, still not very far away, it was really cool to see how he's aged and grown as a person, a songwriter, and a musician. And it caused me to reflect a little bit on my own development since I saw him the first time. There's been a lot of growth in myself there too. So all in all, it was a great show, and I think it was just so cool to come full circle, if you will, from the guy who inspired me from the get-go to pick up a guitar and try this thing out, to then come back as a professional musician and take in his show again and just enjoy it. It was a really cool experience, and I wouldn't have traded it for the world. So, Mom, thanks again for that treat. That was a blast. She even treated me to a t-shirt, one of the merch shirts. So I'm pretty excited about that. I've worn it twice already, and I'm I'm sure it'll be a regular in my t-shirt rotation. But that's all for me for today. I hope you get a chance to take in an inspirational concert soon. Summer's coming up, and that means summer music festival season. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. I'm Cameron. This is The Starving Artist. Until next time.
We're glad you're here, and we hope you're making wellness a priority. Hope you're getting something out of the podcast. And especially for people who are new, you might not know that the podcast was inspired by my book, Accidentally Well by John Webster. It's available on Amazon, Indigo, Barnes & Noble, pretty much anywhere where you can buy books online. And this is my pitch for you to buy a copy and have a read. I think it'll enhance the experience of the podcast, and it will also help us defray some costs because it's really expensive putting out a podcast. So grab a copy if you can, and in the meantime, enjoy the rest of the show.
Move that body like we're meant to do. John, I am getting so excited because it is almost bike season, and I love riding my bike to work. But you have been walking to work, even through the snow and the ice and everything. So that's what we're going to talk about for Move That Body, biking and walking to work.
I really like watching you come home. If I happen to be out front of the house or looking out the window when you come home, you look like one of these people from a movie, you know, on the French bike, and you're happy and you're flying. And
I love especially biking home from work because I finish work at 5.
Right.
And where I work, it's a very busy, congested area, not easy to get out of. And I'm biking through everybody and passing everyone. So by the time I get home, I'm just so happy because it was so easy. I don't have that frustration of trying to turn left or that kind of stuff.
I like the idea about talking about this now because I've been walking to work. I don't even know when I started, so I'd have to go back. I know I was training for the half marathon I ran in September. Mm-hmm. I know I injured my hip and I had to walk. I'm going to guess it was probably July or August. And so I'm coming up on, 3/4 of a year. And frankly, I'm surprised I'm still doing it because here's what I predicted is I'd start walking to work and I'd be like, oh, this is wonderful. It's great to walk to work and I get all these benefits. And then, at a certain time, it's like, I got to get to work and I can do it in 10 minutes if I drive.
I know.
It takes 50 minutes if I walk. And I do that a couple times. And next thing you know, I wasn't walking. But that hasn't happened.
Yeah, I'm so surprised.
And the message I want to just try to communicate, my personal experience, is that I find that if I don't walk to work, I miss it. Right? So
yes.
Now, for example, it used to be on Fridays, I'd always be thinking, because I can work from home or at work, I try and get into work regularly. I really believe that it's great for me and it's great for the people I work with. Having said that, though, like a lot of people aren't in the office on Friday and I can take it off. But lately, the reason I go into work is because I think if I don't go to work, I won't get my walk.
Oh, interesting.
And I want to get my walk. I do listen to my books too when I'm walking, and sometimes I'm reading a really good book. It also depends on how good the book is if I really want to get out there. But anyway, I'm rambling. But the point is, I started doing this, and it's a really big part of my kind of work life now. I get to work energized, feeling good, and my mind is clear.
I agree. That's really a great benefit. For me, I really like the movement. I love, like for me even, I don't have to bike that far. It's 5-6 kilometers maximum?
I think it's 3.
Oh gosh, it's 3 kilometers. So it's not that far. And believe it or not, it doesn't take me that much longer to bike than to drive. So I really like that. It's not taking too much time. And I love the movement. I feel like I'm energized and ready to work when I get there. And the fresh air wakes me up. So all of those things is really beneficial. And then I told you why I like biking home.
By the way, I take the bus home. So that helps with time.
Right.
And for other reasons I've talked about, I like taking the bus too.
Which is very odd.
I know, it's very odd. The one thing I wonder though, and I think I'll try this year once the bike season comes out, is I think it's probably good for me to bike at least once a week. So I mix it up.
Yeah.
Walk a lot, but bike once a week for the enjoyment of biking. Something I didn't think of when I started on this kind of wellness journey is actually using your body to get to work. And something we've been doing, both of us, and we're finding so much benefit out of it mentally, physically.
It makes me almost want to be more environmentally friendly. Like the more I do, the more I want to do.
It definitely does that to me.
Yeah. So I get more excited. You know, I'm starting to reuse, like when I bring all my lunch, I use reuse bags and don't use plastic. And I really feel like the more I do, the more I want to do environmentally. I feel like we're saving the planet and everyone can do their part. And I really enjoy being part of that and doing more.
I talked to someone the other day and they read my book, which was fantastic. And they said they were inspired to start doing something, but I could tell that inspiration is one thing and doing is another.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, well, is it time? And it is, yes, I just don't have time. And my suggestion, because it was based on my experience, is just make time to go for a walk 3 times a week. 45 minutes, 3 times a week. Start there. The reason I mentioned this, because you said that you want to do more to save the environment.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing happens to me when I'm walking. When I'm walking, I am walking and I think this is great. I'm going to reduce my carbon footprint. And then I think of other ways to do it. And on the fitness side of things, if this person could just start walking, I said, if you just start walking 3 times a week, while you're walking, you'll be thinking about how important it is to get physical exercise back in your life. That's what happened to me. So you get the benefit of both walking, and it's going to inspire you to do more and give you ideas to do more.
And how you feel, just that feeling of so much.
Right.
That really, you're like, I want this feeling more.
Right.
So yeah.
And then you start doing a little bit more stuff. Maybe you start to jog. Maybe you start to do weights. It's a really great thing. And what our experience is walking to work, biking to work has a whole bunch of great benefits, including saving the planet. There's a thought. Popped up while running. I try not to think about work when I'm out for my run, but it sneaks into my head sometimes. The other day it did in a good way. I got a message from a work colleague, and it occurred to me at the time when I got it, I don't know why, I just thought, this person is wonderful. This person is amazing. There are some people I meet in my life, and I can't really identify. I don't try to identify why. I don't have like a checklist. I don't really, if I had to explain it, I can't really tell you. But there are some people who I've met in my life, and you meet them, and you meet them again, and you talk to them more, and time goes by, and you realize from the very first time you met them and every time you met them, you trust them. You know they're honorable. You know they're good. You know they're empathetic. You know they care. You know that no matter what, they'll be there for you. And they don't say it, like they're not making a pitch. They're not doing really anything. And a lot of times it's not a situation where I need somebody like that, but I can just tell they're people like that. And I just got this really good feeling when I got that email and thought about that person and how that person is just really a gem. And I'm glad to have met them. It's me. Am I?
Yeah. Just let me say, flip side of the coin.
We were talking the other day about something after I was talking to someone about possibly being an interview guest.
Yes.
And this person was very young.
Yes.
So here's the concept that jumped into my mind based on my experience.
And I agree.
When you're young, especially kind of at that university college age, or you're in high school, and you look around the world and you think, I can make a difference. Mm-hmm. And you've got all kinds of passion, and it's fantastic. And I just love talking to people who have that passion. Mm-hmm. It's very energizing and makes me feel good about life because they are going to try and change the world. But they don't have the wisdom yet. And we could do a whole flip side on that side of it, but let's just put it this way. Like, you need to stub your toe a few times, and you have to make some mistakes, and you have to go through the school of hard knocks. And then you have much more wisdom in terms of how you can actually achieve things. Mm-hmm. And then when you're older, like I am now.
Don't say that.
Okay.
But
when you're older,
yeah,
you have wisdom, but you're busy and you've done all kinds of stuff. And frankly, you can lose the passion.
Yes.
You'd like the world to be better, but maybe you've been beat up enough for whatever reason, you're not so much having the passion. Mm-hmm. And so you got this weird dynamic where if you really want to make these really great changes, you need the passion of the youth, but the wisdom of the old, which, by the way, is one of the reasons that I love the concept of me talking to younger people, because I feel like maybe between the two of us, we can find something cool.
Yes. And I do think that you need that.
I do too.
You need both. And actually, that was one of the main things I loved about teaching young kids, because everyone was like, why do you like this? You need so much patience.
And what do you mean by young?
Well, I like them young, like 3 to 5.
Right.
Really young, because they have no inhibitions. So they'll do and be and say anything.
Yes.
And I love the enthusiasm and the creativity.
I think it's a slightly different but related concept in that sense, which is those kids, when you're talking about kind of art and artistic creativity.
Yeah.
And when you're young like that, it hasn't been driven out of you that you
Right.
can just do whatever you want.
Yes.
So that's another similar thing.
And I still feel like these university, college area kids, they have the knowledge. They're developing in the field of their interests, and they are learning so much, and they really have great ideas and great creativity of how to develop that and how to change things. But like you said, it's hard, right? Because
they don't. So they might have. So let me go back to my own experience at that time. Mm-hmm. And the point I want to make here is not to lament it, not to be frustrated by it. But if you know that youth is filled with passion, but not as much wisdom, and being older is filled with wisdom, but not as much passion, then the idea is to try and have more passion when you're older and more wisdom when you're younger.
Or to put the two together.
Exactly. But know that there's going to be a problem, but you can work on it. And so when I go back to my youth, I did want to make changes, and I would get frustrated when I can't, right?
Yeah.
So what tends to happen, for example, if you're in university, maybe you get an idea. Yeah. This is what's going to make the world a better place. And it's an idea, and it's usually kind of a limited idea. It doesn't take into account a complex interaction of all this stuff. And you tell somebody about it, or you write a thesis, or you present it, and people are like, that won't work.
Yeah.
And so you're like, well, I'm frustrated. And I guess what I'm suggesting is if you are that young person and you have an idea, then that's great. And it might not work, but don't present it like all or nothing. Present it like I have this idea. And when people start pushing back, then be like, okay, I can improve my idea, as opposed to you're just
you don't know anything.
You're the wrong generation, or you don't know what you're talking about.
You don't have enough experience. You need to try this or do this, or yes, I agree. Don't get frustrated. I really do believe that when things go wrong, it's a really good learning experience for you. So generally, you don't just learn from experience, you learn from the good and the bad. And I feel like you learn more from the negative experiences. So if you can try and take those negative experiences and learn from them and then build, that's awesome. So awesome.
And the message I want to send is to kind of people my age, which was when this happened to me the other day, when I was talking to this person the other day, it occurred to me, am I running out the clock? Have I gotten to the point where I started running out the clock and I'm like, I can't change the world. I can't fix the environment. You know, I just put my arms up and say, well, I'm heading towards retirement and I'm going to travel and enjoy it. And it reinvigorated me. Now, in fairness, this podcast in part is me trying not to lose that passion.
Excellent.
It'd be great if we could find ways to get that passion back. And what I'm just also saying is talking to young people is a great way to do that because they have that fire.
That's why I think it'd be great for both old and young, you know, for the wisdom and the passion to come together because they both benefit from it.
Exactly.
Right? You get that energy for the wisdom and the younger get the knowledge and hopefully can then build the idea. And I never think you run out the clock. Like I am going to literally run into the end, you know, like run off the cliff. Like I am just going to keep going and going and going. I'm never going to give up.
I had to do some introspection and ask myself, am I? And I think the answer is no, but I think I have to keep asking that question.
Good.
Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own, and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way. It is sign-off time, and I'm here with Elise and Sheila.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm going to keep mine a bit shorter because I know Sheila's doing a lot this week. I'm going to just talk about two things. First of all, it's been a year since I was president of our law association, and we had our big Coulter Osborne Awards dinner. It was fantastic and saw lots of people, and I had a really good time. And the other quick point I'll make is that we're trying a gardening experiment. There is a park behind us, and they had to do some work, take down some trees last year. And so there's kind of a big spot where there's no grass, there's no anything, weeds were growing. So we just raked it a bit and threw a whole bunch of wildflower seeds down today. Mm-hmm. And we will see in about 6 months whether there's any flowers there.
I don't think it'll take 6 months. Let's hope sooner.
No, but I think if they start from seeds, they're really little initially.
Right.
I don't think we'll see much.
Okay.
How about you, Elise?
Well, I had an interesting work week because 3 out of the 5 work days, I was facilitating a French exam for our senior students, our grade 12 students in our school board. So it's very different than what I typically do, which is teach kindergarten. Mm-hmm. So being able to work with some high school students and seeing where their French education leads them, I think was really fulfilling, and it was a nice change of pace. So I really enjoyed that.
That sounds awesome. And just to get to practice more French is probably really nice.
It was really nice. There is an oral portion of the test that you get to facilitate with the students. And often you get to just discuss with them. There is a formal debate that you get to do with them, which is kind of fun, but also a little nerve-wracking. But it's a lot of fun to be able to practice French and just celebrate French education. How about you, Sheila?
Well, I had a very busy week this week, and I would pretty much say it was busy socially. So we had a celebration of life for Kate. That's our niece and Elise's cousin. So that was on Wednesday, and lots of family, so many people, hundreds and hundreds. It was great to see so many people out there celebrating Kate. And then I had a lunch with a friend of mine from grade school. So I made time for that. I was so busy this week working there, and I was like, no, I'm going to make time. So I had lunch with her, which is just so nice to catch up. And I went to a fashion show. So one of the stores in Erin, it is called Hannah's Closet. They had a fashion show. So my sister bought tickets. And so my mom and I went to this fashion show. And the lady beside us was hilarious, commenting on every single piece. And she was like, matchy, matchy. I love the matchy, matchy, the shoes and the purse. And the models were just neighbors and friends and clients of the owner. So it was just a really fun experience.
Yeah, Erin is a pretty small town in Ontario. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit surprising to have a fashion show, but it sounded like fun.
Yeah, it was really fun. So we did that. And then we went to another celebration of life, John and I. So someone that I knew through dance. It was so nice to catch up with students that I haven't seen in such a long time, as well, of course, of my friend Cheryl. It was so nice to see her. So it was a great social week for me. I'm also going on my trip this week. So I'm leaving at the end of the week, trying to get everything organized and get to the airport and get our tickets and just doing all that. I'm sure you all know what that's like. So I'm getting very excited about that. And I think John's getting very excited too.
Well, talking about the second celebration of life, there was a young person who read my book and they were actually excited to see me. Uh-huh. And they came and talked to me. I've never had that feeling before, so that was kind of cool. I like pulling your leg about your trip to Italy. I think it's amazing. And I think you're going to love it. And so I'm fully supportive, but I'm going to keep poking fun at you and make it sound like I'm going to be miserable and try and make you feel guilty. Because that's how I roll.
But I am very excited. And even just for the weather, it's been quite cold this week. Looking forward to some sun and some warmth, and I'm also doing some yoga. So that's what's going on for me.
Well, I'm going to have to figure out how to survive without Sheila, who does like 90% of the stuff around the house. I think I can do it for a week, or is it 10 days?
It's 10 days, yes.
We'll
at
have
least.
to figure out how to do sign off without Sheila. That's no fun.
I'm going to phone it in, I think.
That'd be fun.
Can't miss.
Okay, so thanks for joining us this week, and stay tuned to figure out how we get Sheila's Italy sign off by joining us again next week.
That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.